Hello, this is Steven R, and here we are here with another top 10 video. Today we'll be doing my top 10 anti-heroes from TV. Now, for this list, again, this is another purely subjective basis, all personal opinion. And what constitutes as an anti-hero? Well, for me, anti-heroes are usually villains that have do good deeds, whether it is for, whether they want to or not. Basically, it's villains that we essentially have a moral, they exist kind of almost in the moral grey area. They do good deeds, they do bad deeds, but then they can do good deeds, and sometimes vice versa. But also, it's characters that we are surprisingly likable to some extent, and we enjoy watching. So, with that out of the way, let's get into the list. I thought I'd start off this list with an honorable mention, and the honorable mention is Richard Harrow from Boardwalk Empire. Now, people would probably have Nucky as the anti-hero, but I feel Richard Harrow is just a far more compelling anti-hero for my liking than Nucky Thompson is. That's just a personal opinion in regards to actual anti-heroes. In the show, Richard Harrow was a veteran of the First World War. After being disfigured with during his time fighting, he now wears this mask to cover up the essentially scarred side. He eventually then becomes a hitman, a gangster / enforcer for various mobs, and essentially is a ruthless assassin and killer. But what I eventually like is how he grows. What he really wants is a family and to have that kind of happy ending. And his character's journey is really interesting, and the ending I won't spoil, but it kind of makes sense for that character to get that ending. And honestly, he's just really compelling of a really tragic lost soul for me, and I think it's probably the best character on Boardwalk Empire apart from Nucky. I just really like how he just fits into that whole era, but also there's something about him that I think would very well fit within not just comic book world, but also honestly, action shows in general, or even movies. There's something about him that's just so appealing. I give him an honorable mention because there's just others I have to at least acknowledge are better in regards to the mainstream of anti-heroes, but also just but also some I like better than most. So he definitely is an honorable mention. With that out of the way, let's get into the list. Number 10. Dexter Morgan, Dexter. Dexter is a forensic technician for the local police department by day, but at night he goes around killing essentially some of the worst people who normally escape justice and all that. He's essentially a serial killer. Why he's an anti-hero is because even though he does kill and has a very tragic backstory, witnessing at a very young age the death of his mother, what makes him, in my opinion, a really interesting anti-hero is first off, he's a serial killer that we are rooting for because he is killing arguably some of the worst vile people probably ever, but we are rooting for him even though we know he's a serial killer, and yet he kills because he likes it. We sympathize with his backstory, but we also feel sorry for him because of this, I guess, very twisted mindset with him, loving to kill, but he only kills those who deserve it, and those that escape justice. It ruins many relationships. To many, Dexter Morgan, first off, the show is considered absolutely fantastic. Now, I've not really seen the full show. I think I might have seen a few episodes, but I haven't seen its entirety. But I have seen, I think, half the series. But the reason why it's at number 10 is because I love more characters than others, but also, even though I find him a very interesting character, I can't exactly say I fully am behind or would root for a serial killer to win, but the fact that they could write it and make it work, I applaud it. But the reason why it's at number 10 because I just like more than others, are just more suitable to my type of character I would love to watch and love to succeed. So with that so that's why it's at number 10. Number 9. Number 9, Don Draper from Mad Men. Like the previous show, I've only really seen half this series, but Don Draper is for me arguably a really fun character. Basically, Madman is basically revolves around basically during the time period of the 60s with the character in question, Don Draper, who is like part of this like advertising firm and essentially kind of almost businessman kind of type character. And essentially the series kind of revolves around him kind of struggling to have a professional life and his personal life. He is surprisingly a little... Now, he can definitely be a bit of a douchebag, but we've sympathized with him because essentially we find a bit about his backstory, which makes us really sympathize with him, and we as the audience want to see this character almost get a happy ending almost. He's definitely... You can tell that this character is definitely a product of the 60s. In many ways, I kind of view him as what Bond would be if he wasn't in the spy game, and if he had a more businessman, you know, a more normal life. This is what I think Bond would be, and if he was American. He can be a bit of a douchebag, he could definitely be cruel at times, but there are moments where but again, anti-heroes, we are rooting for him. And there's just something about him that makes us root for him. Now, I put him at 9 instead of 10, because for me, because I said before, with 10, even though I really like Dexter, there are parts where I just can't root for a serial killer. But for Don Draper, there's just something about him I just click more. Maybe it's because of, like I said, he does kind of remind me of Bond if he didn't go in that in the spy direction, but of this other direction in life. Maybe that's why. But I think it's also because he's a bit more mysterious compared to Dexter. And gives me far more intrigue to this character than I think any other anti-hero. Well, maybe with our next one, which reminds us, number 8. Number 8, Danjaron. Now, in Star Wars, Star Wars is one of the most beloved franchises. Mostly known for movies, but believe it or not, it's now gotten to some TV shows. Originally with animated programs like Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars The Clone Wars, but rarely did it have a live-action TV show, and that's what The Mandalorian comes from. Mandalorian, which is of course huge in the Star Wars mythos, where the name comes from, and it's on Disney Plus, and it's one of the most well-received, Star Wars content of the essentially new times we live in now. Basically, we follow Danjaron, who's basically this bounty hunter who stops at nothing to get the job done, and has a very mysterious past. But what makes him interesting for me is that he takes in what essentially is a baby Yoda. That's what I guess we fans call what you see here. And essentially, not only it falls for him almost like a little bait, essentially like his own son, you can kind of get a feeling. And he wants to, take good care of him and make sure nothing happens to him. And he doesn't care, and in his mind, that is his main priority, to look after this baby Yoda. What's interesting is, even though he's a bounty hunter with a heart of gold. And it's what's refreshing to me is that for the first time in Star Wars, we're having a character that's more grey. We've had those that have the dark side, the light side, but rarely do we see a character that has so much grey. For me, that's just very different and just very interesting and unique to me in Star Wars, to have a character that really symbolizes that. And also just the design of it. It's a classic Mandalorian, which, like we see with characters like Jango Fett, Boba Fett, and Death Watch, but it also has like this almost knight in shining armor feel to it, which I guess is what they were going for. It's just an image that just stands out. And again, I'm sure as we go forward, we're going to find more and more about this guy's backstory as we go on. And I can't wait to see where his story, ends. Because honestly, this character's journey is one of the most interesting I've seen an anti-hero take. He's definitely one of the most interesting ones. Number 7. Number 7 is Walter White. One of the most unique, I guess, anti-heroes probably ever. Walter White was originally just a science teacher, until he eventually got into the drug trade because of his rapidly growing illness he had, cancer, I believe, to, make sure there's enough funds to support his family. And then, because of that, he then became, as time went on, became one of the most ruthless drug kingpins ever. What I like about Walter White is the character, how it evolved. He got into this business with good intentions, to have enough money to support his family. But as time went on, he evolved from this almost mild, meek, down in his luck, very reasonable and lovable fellow, and then evolved into those almost ruthless and just monstrous character. The actor playing him completely won 4 Emmys and brought one of the most interesting characters to the screen. What I love about Walter White so much is that the actor playing him was Malcolm in the Middle, known for comedy, but he completely blows it out of the water, portraying one of the most characters that we loved him in the beginning, but then grew to be one of the most, and grew to be this most ruthless monster, with really very little left of what he was in the first season. This show is just outstanding, and Walter White is an even more outstanding and just well written and well acted character. All came together for one of the most interesting characters I've seen in TV. Number 6. Number 6 goes to Loki. Now, Loki's appeared in movies, and for those who don't know, Loki is the god of trickster, who essentially has a bit of an ego complex. Originally appeared in the MCU films until eventually getting his own spin-off TV show. Now I'm kind of cheating, as it should be really TV characters, not movies. But come on, Tom Hiddleston kills it as Loki, and I like how, with him really developing this more anti-hero thing, and I like it. In the show Loki, we follow essentially the god Loki, who is the god of mischief, step out of his brother's shadow to eventually on his own path to essentially be this more anti-hero, which was established that there could be more to him being the villain and being an anti-hero at the end, during the whole Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. Kind of followed that with the whole what happened in those movies. He follows on this path, but he's also seen as being far nicer, and not just nicer, but also very comedic. For me, Tom Hiddleston kills it, kills it in the role, and there's just something about him having the more ability to spread this character's wings in this show. Really just shows like what kind of phenomenal actor he is, because not only was he good as Loki, he was also great as Hank Williams, in my opinion. He was great in that role. And for me, I think he'll be great in any role you give him, and this is just one of the best, I think, roles that he has done and will ever be associated with his career. It's just a fantastic role. Number 5. Number 5 goes to Tony Soprano from The Sopranos. Tony Sopranos is the first ever TV anti-hero. All the characters and all the other big villain TV anti-heroes came after him. Tony Soprano is basically a mobster in the New Jersey crime family, where he has to struggle balancing his own family life and the crime family he is in. He is a generally kind of likable guy, the guy next door type of, and in true though he's a mobster, in the earlier seasons he was this nice, likable guy. He especially loved animals and can't stand when animals get hurt. But over time, him being the boss made him ruthless, and isolates himself, and essentially all the likable qualities that was there, is almost gone by the end of the series. James Gandolfini does a tremendous job here. He kind of reminds me of Walter White, but if you think about this, was the first Walter White. But unlike Walter White, when we first meet him, he's already shown to be, already a criminal, and already does ruthless and violent acts. But he's a genuinely likable and sympathetic guy, and him going to, psychiatrist, for help with his panic attacks. There's just something about him being, gangster romanticized image, but as time goes on, the romanticized image leaves. There's just something about him playing this character, playing this role, that, again, will define the late James Gandolfini's entire career, And The Sopranos was one of the most groundbreaking television shows of the early 2000s. Tony Soprano was the character that brought in the anti-heroes to really be popular and dominate TV shows, and we still get that even to this day. But in many ways, Tony Soprano was the first, and I'm hesitant, and I really thought I should be in the top 3, but I realized there are other anti-heroes I really like more, and really should take more of the somewhere in the top 4 spot. So he gets the top, so he's definitely in the top 5 for me, but he's not at number 1, even though most would probably have him as number 1. But that's just me. Number 4. Raymond Reddington from The Blacklist. The Blacklist follows around notorious criminal wanted fugitive Raymond Reddington, who eventually, after surrendering himself to the FBI and becomes an informant, he, along with the FBI team, go around hunting people on what he calls the Blacklist, some of the most notorious criminals that not even law enforcement knows about. Even though he's a notorious international criminal, what I love about Raymond Reddington so much as a character is he has this kind of funny sense of humor. The way he just delivers his speeches and dialogue. It is phenomenal performance there. There's just something about it that just absolutely works for me. And James Spade, I believe, plays this character, owns the role. And how we see, and really he's mostly this more human and lighthearted side, but when the darkness comes out, the villainous comes out, it is truly something to see, and that's why I've always loved this character more than anything else. Raymond Reddington is truly a outstanding character and a well-written one. And with the Blacklist kind of soon coming to a close, I hear they'll be done by season 9's end. I can't wait to see how this character, meets his end. I really want to see it. Next, taking the 3rd spot is Spike. Spike is a character that both appeared in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and its spin-off, Angel. Originally starting as essentially the bad guy, this tough guy, essentially dark vampire with a sort of rebel angle. He's just truly a fantastic character. Originally just this bad guy, but then come season 4 becomes a sort of build as both the main / reoccurring, and then becomes a sort of one above his love interest. I just love how he transformed over time. Originally we liked him as the bad guy, and normally when you turn bad guys to anti-heroes, immediately we are more invested in their story in the long run, and this is a really great example of that. The design of the character, of course, is also striking and very appealing to me. Essentially, Spike is really the James Dean of vampires to me, and what I really love about him is his character evolve, his backstory, or how he was before he was a vampire. I thought was inspiring of him being almost the complete opposite of what you would expect Spike to have been, and his character development is really inspiring, and also just how he interacts with the cast is really great. He can be this almost antagonist one moment in the beginning of the series, almost this anti-hero. He is what I really like about the Buffy the Vampire Slayer is some of its well-written characters, and Spike is probably the best example, apart from, I would say, Willow having well-written characters in all of the entire show and its spin-off show as well, especially when he went to Angel, how he and Angel, how they banter with each other, for me, is, also made that season work, and the two worked off really well with each other. Number 2. Number 2 goes to the Penguin. I've talked about Gotham's interpretation of the Penguin numerous times on this channel, and even though he is really a villain, I like how this version of the Penguin is a bit of an anti-hero. In the show, Penguin is just a small-time hood within the local Fish Mooney mob who happens to be associated with the Falcone crime family. Penguin tries at one point to try and essentially rise up in the ranks of the mob, but it only backfires, and he ends up at the worst possible place. But thanks to his brilliant mind, he manages to find a way out of the situation, and then he begins his climb to power, and eventually becomes essentially the biggest crime lord in Gotham's history. Robert Lord Taylor does a phenomenal portrayal of the Penguin. I don't even think phenomenal will even come close to describing just the performance he gives. Even though this is the character slowly transforming to becoming the more comic book Penguin, what I like about it, even though it is that, is that, and really he's the rags to riches. He has a code, but as time the humanity he has is gone, which I'm noticing a lot of anti-hero stories kind of follow that trend. But another thing I also like is, for Penguin, it's a dog-eat-dog world. He's shown to be a master manipulator, a masterful schemer, and really, that is Penguin with that side. And it's also interesting to see the Penguin really start out at the lowest point on the Gotham pole, then use his skills to rise up in the ranks. And really, in many ways, he's part of the first generation of new villains in Gotham. The old school gangsters are out, but the more psychos coming in. Penguin is the character that blends between the two worlds. The more wacko criminals and the sophisticated businessmen mobsters. He's a blend between those two. Several storylines from the Penguin, such as him becoming mayor, is interesting. And also very interesting is him rising to power to become the city's biggest mob boss. I think is really inspiring. And honestly, out of everyone on Gotham, the Penguin is my favorite probably character on the show. Robin Lord Taylor, though, doesn't look like the Penguin in regards to him being more fat. I like how he developed his own iconography, and this is, again, a younger Penguin, so, and he looks more bird-like than Penguin-like, but honestly, I don't mind that. How he gets his limp is fascinating. And just the stories we're told with this character. People have often tuned in for Penguin's story, and I think that this is perhaps one of the most greatest portrayals of the Penguin we got outside of the comics. And it's definitely one of my personal favorite characters, probably in all of fiction. But there has to be a number one. So number one goes to Rumpelstiltskin, aka Mr. Gold, from Once Upon a Time. Honestly, Once Upon a Time has a lot of great anti-heroes and great characters in general, with guys like Captain Hook and the Evil Queen, Regina, honestly being some of my more favorites. But Rumpelstiltskin was always a favorite of mine. Basically, Once Upon a Time revolves around essentially the town of Storybrooke, where where Emma is taken back to this town by her by her son that she gave up for adoption, Henry, and he's told that basically all these fairy tale storybook characters are trapped here, and Rumpelstiltskin is one. I'm not really sure if you would call Rumpelstiltskin an anti-hero, honestly, as in many ways he does become a bit more of the big bad for a lot of the series. Honestly, the portrayal of Gold and Rumpelstiltskin are both similar, but they feel so authentically the same character. I don't know how the actor managed to accomplish that. Also, him evolving to being something more than just a beast or a monster or a trickster or master manipulator. There's just something about him that's just such captivating. The design of the character, and just when he is Gold, he's also very much compelling. There's more layers to this character than what we see, and his journey is also, I think, one of the most interesting I've seen. And really where, in a world with magic, good versus evil, and people becoming, their true hero and destiny and all that, Rumpelstiltskin is a kind of a person, every time he turns up, we don't know whose side is he going to be on. Your side? Is he going to be with you? Is he going to be against you? Will he be doing it for noble reasons or selfish reasons? If there's any character that I think best describes both an anti-hero, but a character that is blurred between black or white and just being a full-on grey, I think Rumpelstiltskin more than encapsulates that, and that is why he is the number one choice for me. And there we have it. Those are my top 10 anti-heroes. Do you agree with this list? What else character should have been on the list? Who is your favorite? Please write them down in the comments. Until next time, this has been the Steven Hour, and ladies and gentlemen, so long for now.